I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey everybody, welcome to the show tonight. As always, I'm your host, Dan Hamilton. You guys, I got a really cool guest, a couple guests on tonight. These are some great people from the great state of Mississippi, and Patrick and Jen, or Pat and Jen, they had a few encounters that will really make you scratch your head and wonder exactly what's going on in their part of the world. But before we bring them on, I just want to say thank you so much for joining the show, subscribing, liking, sharing, comments. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And as usual, guys, I do have a $2.99 a month membership that gets you access to an early Saturday release. I do those once a month. So without further ado, you guys, let's bring Jen and Pat on. You guys, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Daniel? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for reaching out. I was just going through my email that day and I'm like, for one reason, I saw I had something in my spam folder. And for whatever reason, your thing was kicked to my spam folder. I'm like, oh, holy smokes. So I had to reach out to you. So you've had some, you believe you had 3 encounters with Bigfoot, and then you had another one you believe of Skinwalker. So let me ask you a couple questions before we get into that story, or those stories, I should say. So where was Bigfoot at on your radar before you had any of these encounters?
I had heard of it. Wasn't really yeah, he exists kind of thing, but just kind of jokingly with my dad, he would bring it up from time to time jokingly, but I didn't really think it was there.
Okay. And since then, how has that kind of changed your look on things?
Well, after my last encounter, my wife, we weren't together at that time, I don't think. Since then, I've done a little bit of research and such, and I came across a recording that someone had made, and the sound in the video was pretty much the exact same sound that I heard. And
Okay.
I got a little more interested and started doing a little bit more research. And the more I dig, the more I find that pretty much says, yeah, this is what I saw, or well, what I heard.
Perfect. So, hey, you know what, guys? Without further ado, let's get you guys in on the story. Just let us all know what you had, where it started, and where it ended.
All right. When I was 10, 12 years old, I had just your standard run of the mill, very weak BB gun. And, being a country boy, I'd go out in the woods and shoot birds or lizards, just whatever. And I got home from school one day, and I don't remember the time of year it was or even the month it was. But I went across the road from my house, and we live out in the country, or we did live in the country. And there was woods everywhere. And when you go across the road, some of it had been, a small area had been cleared out, but not very much. I'm, doing my thing, walking through, and there were some brushes that were about waist high. And when I walked through them, I knew where the place was at because I used to go over there and hide and just hang out by myself, kind of thing. I'm standing there and I'm looking around, no big deal. And when I looked down, it was like something told me to look down, And when I did look down, I saw a track. Now, as a family, me, my mom, dad, sister, brothers, a lot of times some of my relatives, we would go to like Tennessee, Gatlinburg, uh, Pigeon Forge, Cage Cove, places like that on vacation. So it wasn't nothing to see a black bear. On one of those vacations, me and my dad actually got about 7 foot from a black bear that was eating a small deer, and there were tracks. So I know what bear tracks look like. Well, anyway, I looked down and there's a track, and it, memory serves, about 6 inches long, 2, 3 inches wide, and it kind of reminded me of a bear track. And I'm looking and I'm like, this is crazy. There are no bears in this area. And then I looked again and I noticed that it had toes. No claw marks, just toes. I've never seen a bear track with toes without having some kind of mark for the claws. And as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, I know it's not mine because I didn't go on that side of the woods barefooted. Nobody in the area ever came up there. So I know it definitely wasn't mine. It was not none of my siblings because they're all older than me. So I'm just looking at it and it kind of freaked me out. I'm thinking, why is there a bear track? But it's not a bear track. It looks like a person's track, only a little bigger, little odd. So I just kind of like, okay, whatever, went on about my business, And at the same house on the same land, not the same place, but let's see, I was probably 12, 10 to 12 then. And this happened about 4 years ago. My dad, he had cancer, and he had a stroke. He was staying with my sister at the time, and I was at his house where I was living, and I went outside on the back porch. And we got the French doors. So I got the French door, and I'm standing on the back porch. Beautiful night, not a cloud in the sky. Probably between 8 and 10 o'clock. Big full moon. And I'm standing there, and I hear this most god awful scream, roar, howl, however you want to classify it, I have ever heard in my life. Daniel, I don't scare very easily. And I more or less grew up in that house on that land. And when I heard it, I was facing north. So it would have been to my west. The tree line from the yard from where I was standing, probably 60, 70, 75 yards at the most. And it couldn't have been too far from that, from the tree line, maybe 100, 125 yards from where I was standing. It had the sound of a scream, a roar, and a growl all kind of mixed in together. I actually found the exact same sound on a video. It terrified me. So I stood there for a second and I'm like, what the ever living, what was that? And my hair stood up on my arms. I went back inside, closed the door, literally ran to my room, and I don't run anywhere unless it's absolute have to. I ran to my room, and while I'm in there, I grabbed my 2 big hunting knives, which were about yay long, and I grabbed an equalizer, And then I go to my dad's room and I grab another equalizer. So I'm standing in the living room with one of them in my right hand pointed north toward the French doors. One's pointing south toward the front door, and I'm facing east toward the carport door. I'm standing there shaking because I'm waiting on something to just blow through the door at any time. And as I'm standing there, I'm thinking, is this going to be enough? Do I need to get something bigger? And the two I had were exceptionally powerful. As I'm standing there, the adrenaline's pumping because it scared, it terrified me. I don't know how long I stood there looking from door to door to door to door, but I know I stood there so long that the adrenaline wore off and both of my arms got heavy from holding those two equalizers up. I didn't sleep very good that night. I actually slept in my dad's old chair in the living room with both of those sitting right beside me. Now, from the front porch, like, say this is the house. Right over here is our little shed / barn thing. And my dad had it built. Well, actually, he built it. He didn't have it built, but he had it built with a chicken pen on it. And every so often, a chicken snake would go in there, or a possum or a raccoon, something like that, would go in there, mess with the chickens, steal the eggs, what have you. This was 2, maybe 3 days after the first one. And I'm sitting there and I got the TV on, and one of my dogs, Little Bit, which you met earlier. I know the listeners didn't get to see her, but she is half German Shepherd, half Jack Russell Terrier. She goes to the front window of the house on the left-hand side of the door and started growling. When she starts growling, I pay attention. She has kept me from stepping on snakes many a time. She has alerted me and my dad to 2 snakes in the yard, and we were sitting there and didn't see them, and they're right there. But she's standing there looking out the window, kind of toward the chicken yard, growling. So I go grab my knives, slip them on, because there's no way I'm going over there to check on them without something with me. So I got equalizer number 1 in one hand and number 2 in the other, and a flashlight in my mouth. Wanted to make sure my hands were free, so to speak, in case I needed to use force. I walk out of the house, and once again, it's not a full moon, but it's still fairly bright, and it's clear again. I hear the chickens going crazy, so I walk over across the street, which is, 50 yards from Daddy's house to the chicken yard?
Yeah.
Maybe 40, 50 yards, 50 yards tops. So
You can see it.
I get over there,
Front porch.
and I'm shining around. I actually take one of them and put it in my other hand so I have a free hand. I grab the flashlight, and I'm looking around, not seeing anything. No possum, no coon, no snake, no nothing. Well, they calmed down. And it's like, okay, false alarm, awesome. And then I got to noticing it was extremely quiet. There was no crickets chirping. There was no birds. There was no sound at all. And I'm thinking, okay, this is probably not good. So I put the flashlight back in my mouth, grab the other one and hold it in this hand. And from the chicken yard door to the road is probably 15, 20 foot max. And then there's a little 2-lane road right there. Well, I say 2-lane, but it's wide enough for 2 cars to pass on. And I can't remember if I was still in the road or if I just got in the yard, but I'm going back at a angle back toward the house, and straight in front of me, say 30 yards, 35 max, I hear the same sound, except it wasn't the same creature. It was, I want to say, a younger female version of it. And the reason I say that, Dan, is, you have kids. So if your son at 10 years old screams at the top of his lungs, and if you have a daughter, your daughter at 10 years old screams at the top of her lungs, it's 2 totally different sounds. One sounds, even though it's a scream, it's going to have a feminine trait to it. And it just sounded like female. And it was very young. If I had to put it in a human age, I would say 8 to 10 years old. So it was a young juvenile. I could definitely tell that from the sound. I believe anyway. But I didn't hear any steps. I didn't hear any running. I didn't hear trees shaking. I didn't hear any of that. Which, truth be told, when I heard that sound, my adrenaline snapped wide open. So now I have the flashlight in my mouth still, and I am running across the yard with one equalizer pointing in that direction and the other one facing forward where I'm going. I jumped on the porch and actually ran into the front door. I didn't open it. I just ran into it. It's a very sturdy door. It did not budge. Luckily, I had dropped the flashlight when I jumped on the porch, or that would have probably been pretty bad. So I open the door. I go in and close the door, deadbolt it. And another night with hardly any sleep, I slept in the same chair again with both of those equalizers with me. Now, since then, I have not heard anything like that. Now, my wife, we go to a creek here as the crow flies, about a mile and a half away. Now, when we go there, sometimes, not every time, but sometimes as we're walking down, when you pull off, you have to go across train tracks. When you pull off the road, we go to the right and go down about 25 yards and park. And then there's a little small train bridge, train trestle, because there's train tracks right there. We park there and we walk down the tracks about a quarter of a mile, and that's where we go swimming at. Sometimes when we're walking, going that way, I don't know if it helps or not, but the tracks are running north right there, and to our right, as we're going down, sometimes we will hear something that sounds like it's pacing us. And if we stop, it stops. None of our dogs are ever alerted to it. And we always take at least 1 or 2 of them with us. We can go down and hang out. And if it starts raining, we hear what sounds like grown men having a conversation, but it's very light. Like you kind of have to strain to hear what they're saying. Sometimes we hear it when it's not raining, but mostly when it's raining is when we hear it. On the way back, that tree line there would be on our left-hand side. And more often than not, we will hear something keeping pace with us at a left-hand side. If we stop, it stops. If I stop and she keeps going, it won't move. If she stops and I keep going, it won't move. It's only if we're walking together that it walks beside us. And the crazy thing about the steps is when you when you go hunting and you're standing in tree limbs, or not tree limbs, tree leaves, and you've been standing in one spot for a while and you shift your weight, that slight little crunch, that's what it sounds like. And we've never seen anything there. But actually, I'm gonna let my wife tell you about the last time we went over there, which this Saturday will be 2 weeks ago, about what we heard and smelt.
Smelled like death. It was a horrible smell. We're sitting there, feels like something's watching you all the time. It's very creepy.
Yeah.
We hear it a lot.
On that Saturday, 2 weeks ago, we went over there and we smelt something like, if you've ever smelt like a dead possum or something on the side of the road and it's hot and that smell and it just hits you and it's like, oh God. We smelt that, but we could only smell it when the wind was blowing, which was coming from heading back would be the left-hand side of the tracks. When we smelt it 2 or 3 times, but we were sitting under the tracks. And every time we would smell it, one or both of the dogs we had with us would kind of try to walk over toward that way, and I'd pull them back on their leash, But we went back that night just for kicks. It was a full moon, beautiful night, and a little bit, which Dan, you met earlier. She actually she has about a 30-foot leash that we use. It's several of them put together. And she's sitting there, she's walking around doing her thing, and then she stopped. And when she stopped, I noticed that all the sound had stopped. There was nothing. She actually walked out about 15 foot and stopped. And when she did, her ears went up, her tail went up, and she was on high alert. And thinking back on it, and I've been thinking about it a lot today, she'd look straight ahead, then she'd look over to the left, and then she'd look back behind her just a little bit, which all bushes on this side with the creek that runs through it. And it was like she was focusing on 3 different things, but right in front of her is where she was focusing the hardest. I took a flashlight, shined it around, didn't see anything. But I did hear at one point where she looked left, I could hear that sound again, like someone was standing there and they shifted their weight and that slight leaf crunch. But yeah, that's, that happens pretty regular that we hear stuff like that. Now, regarding what I believe to be was a skinwalker, I did not see it.
No.
But I did hear it. And I think my wife has actually heard something like that, which she told me about 2 days ago at my dad's house. She stayed there a lot during the day while I was at work to kind of help him out. But I went outside. It was dark. Once again, around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, something like that. My dad was already asleep, so I know it was after 10 o'clock. He was at home at that time. He wasn't at my sister's. And I'm sitting there in the rocking chair, and I hear something, kind of a low scream. And I'm like, I look over toward the bush line, and I'm like, seriously, who's out here making all this noise this time of night? And then I heard, help me, help me, help. and then the most god awful scream. It was not like what I believe to be the Bigfoot scream, but it was a tortured. The only way I can describe it, Dan, is like a tortured, what you would imagine a tortured soul would sound like screaming. And it was not human. You could tell it wasn't human. And as I thought about it over the next few days, the voice didn't really sound fully human. And no, I did not go check it out. I did not call the police. I'm crazy, not stupid. I'm not going over there when I hear something like that. And at that time, I had no idea what a skinwalker was. Didn't even know they existed. But I have looked up some things, and from what little bit I can find on it, the sound does somewhat match some of what we've heard, of what I've heard on some of the videos.
Mhm.
Now, she heard something. I have no idea what. She just said it was a scream, but
Last 2 weeks ago when we went to this woman, I heard like the woman scream from a distance several times. He said to me he never heard it. I did, and it's really loud pitch.
Mhm. Hey, do you guys ever hear a noise like this?
Knocking noise.
Like a clicking noise?
I have, yeah.
I had.
Okay. Because
That's Texas.
some people say that when they hear a noise like that, that it's like a rake or a skinwalker. Again, I've heard that like one time, and that was what I believe was a rake when I was a junior in high school. Well, summer before my senior high school when I was in Tennessee. But you guys, those are, though you didn't have a sighting, it's still very intriguing, and it's in a way it's frightening because I mean you guys are out there doing your thing, and when your dog little bit alerted on something. See, a lot of people, you know, if they're out there walking their dogs, I've seen a lot of people walking dogs, they're on their phones, they're not paying attention. And especially if you're like in an area where there's known coyotes or other predators, especially when you're walking your dogs, people need to pay more attention. And it sounds like you guys are very, very observant of your dogs, when you have them out and about. A lot of times your animals are going to pick up on something way before you do. And, a little bit, like you said, focused on one area, but kind of glanced in two other areas. So let me ask you, do you think it might have been more than one? Just not looking to do any harm, but just kind of check things out to see exactly what you guys were up to.
Um, to that, Daniel, all I can say is going by her reaction, and as well as I know her, absolutely.
Yeah.
See, I've had her since she was small enough to fit in the pocket of a pair of pajamas. That's how little she was. So I've had her entire life. So when she warns me of something, I listen.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say there was more than one, but I don't know what it could have been.
And about how far did you, because I think I missed it, how far from your house are these things happening?
From where we live now, by road, mile and a half, 2 miles tops, in a straight line, mile, mile and a quarter.
Yeah. I mean, if it is Bigfoot, a mile and a half, that's nothing for them to travel. They could travel that real quick,
Right.
especially if they're tearing through the woods, you know. So, but I let me ask you, I've got some sound bites here. Let me ask you if it's something that you might have heard. I've got 3 of them.
All right.
Actually, I've got more than 3. So, tell me what you think if you've heard this.
No.
Never heard
No.
anything like that.
Mm-mm.
Okay, how about this one? This one's looped.
Yeah.
Yes. That's that's a lot like the very first one I heard, but it had more of a
I did.
no, not a high pitch. It had more of a like a sore throat growl kind of
Okay.
to it. But that sounds a lot like it.
Okay, how about this one?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, now, have you guys heard any whoops or anything like that?
No.
Okay, let's try it. This one. This is one of my favorite audios that was sent to me by a friend of mine named Jimmy. He's on. He's has an episode on my channel. All these are, you know, the first ones. The first ones I played were courtesy of Daryl Adams from Al Moon Labs. Those were taken literally right behind his house.
Wow.
Yeah. This one is from I want to say it's either from an area that Jimmy refers to as Oklahoma's Area 51 or Xanadu.
No, wow, that gave me chills. Um, not to that length or extent, but about 6 or 7 seconds into that, where
Hmm.
it's got that lighter tone.
Hmm.
That's what the second one. That's the closest thing I found that the second one sounded like.
Wow, that's that's crazy, and this is all happening, you know, literally within, you know, a 5 mile radius around you.
Yeah.
That's that's crazy. So at night, you know, there at your place, it sounds like you guys you're not really afraid of them. I mean, have they showed any toward, you know, or if what you believe to be Bigfoot, you know, are they showing any kind of hostility towards you, or, you know, like you said, it sounded like it was raiding your guys' chicken house, you know, or might
Yeah.
have been outside. It's because trust me, if it wants to get in to your chicken house, it's gonna get into your chicken house.
Oh yeah. That was at my dad's house.
Okay.
We don't live at that residence anymore.
Okay.
Uh, but if you go like in a straight line from here to there, it's
Mhm.
like 5 miles.
Yeah.
By road, it's what, like 7 miles because it's country road, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but if you took a line and drew from here to there, it would probably be about 5 miles. But as far as hostility, the only thing that I've heard that was kind of odd, um, a couple Saturdays ago when we took Let a Bit with us, that day when we were coming back, you know the big gray rocks that they put on the side of train tracks.
Mhm. Yep.
All right, you know what they sound like if you pick one up and you drop it, and it goes
Yep.
tink 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 tink. Tink.
Yep.
She didn't hear this, but I heard once again from our left. We were heading back to my truck. It sounded like one of them hit another rock. Like, I mean, as a kid or an adult or what have you, if you take one and we throw it,
Mhm.
it hits the rock and it goes tink 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 on the
Yep.
rocks or with the rail.
Yeah.
This, like, it hit with so much force that it just, and that was it. It was one into
Wow.
the other side into a rock. There was no teetering or clittering of any other rocks. It was just bam, and you could tell it hit with some force. But rather than that, we've never had anything that was like throw it at us or get out of here. None of that.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. Go back to the chicken house thing. So you went out and investigated, and I love how you call them equalizers. I love that. I'm going to start using that. Um, did you hear anything outside of the chickens kind of going crazy? Because I know what it's like. Because when I grew up, we lived on a hobby farm, and literally my dad had hundreds of chickens. And I remember sitting up because it was attached to my dad's, like, garage where he worked on cars, and there was a door that went he had, like, a side door, the main door, and he had, like, a front side door, so if you're looking at the garage on the left, he had a door on the back left part of the garage, then you had your main garage door, and then on the right-hand side, you had a smaller front door on the side, and so what he did is he built a coop on that left-hand side, so then we can go through the garage and then open that door and then go in and get eggs and whatnot like that, and it was a huge coop, and then he took and we had a huge run for 'em, so they would just be out there literally, we honestly had probably about 2 or 300 chickens, and I remember sitting up on that garage, because we had something get in there and killed about 15 or 20 chickens, and
Wow.
so, we went up there I went up there with a .22, and come to find out it was a fox. Blasted that fox, and then we had a raccoon get in there, I popped him, and then I wanna say they were weasels, that's what they look like, weasels, and I couldn't shoot those things, I tried, those things are pretty quick, and then, took out a couple coyotes as well. But, you know, I know what it sounds like when something is in the coop or in the run and those chickens are losing their mind. When you walked out there and you hear this commotion going on, about how long from when you got out there and started flashing around did they calm down?
Um, it was actually after I got in the chicken yard with them
Mhm.
and was, excuse me. If you look at the barn, we always called it a barn. It's more of a shed, but
Mhm.
it was built like this, and it's got it's made out of tin and pine trees that me and my dad, my mom, and brothers and all cut down and skinned with a. We always called it a pole peeler. I don't know what it's actually called.
Yeah.
We skinned them down, and that's what the barn was built out of.
Mhm.
But when the roof comes down like this, there's a little hole up here for a door, and then the door here, and the outside comes like so. Well, the
Mhm.
chicken yard was built right up under this onto that.
Yeah.
And when you right by the chicken yard, it was opened up to where you could walk to the back and open a door and go in. Because at one time we had goats.
Mhm.
I checked that area real good first because I went over there with my dad one night and he shot a 6.5 foot chicken snake that was over there. And oh yeah, I'm 5'11", and I had the tail of it between my fingers, and I was holding it, and its tail was about that far above my head, and its head was touching the ground, and it still had that slight curve to it. So it
No,
was a big
thank you.
but when I went in, after I checked there, I went in, I checked around the trees over it and standing in the chicken yard, shining the trees, nothing. Well, they calmed down after a couple minutes. They kind of chilled out and calmed down. And I'm like, okay, y'all have lost your minds. I'm going back over there because something don't feel right. And then I noticed everything was quiet. And I said, yeah, something's definitely not right. This is not good.
Yeah, do you think
So
it just kinda stepped away, far enough to make them think that it was gone and just kinda watched you?
that's a good possibility. I will say that none of the chickens ever died. I mean,
Okay.
none of them ever came up missing or anything. Strangest thing though, these chickens, my dad took very good care of them. They always laid eggs like clockwork.
Mm-hmm.
And for about 2.5 weeks, there were no eggs at all. None. Not even a shell. And then after a little while, they started laying again. My dad said, I don't know much about them, but he said that they would go through phases where they wouldn't lay,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll go through phases where they'll lay a lot. I don't know if that was a phase or what, but I mean, if I'm gonna go in a chicken coop and I'm hungry, I'm gonna get the chicken. I ain't gonna worry about the eggs,
Yeah.
But none of them ever came up missing. Now he did have some ducklings and some small turkeys.
Mm-hmm.
All of them came up missing over a period of about a week. That was before he got his chickens.
Were there any feathers or anything laid around, or just gone?
I don't remember.
Because you know as well as I know, if you have a weasel, a fox, a raccoon, a possum, a feral cat, a bobcat, something that gets into a coop,
Oh yeah,
there's feather, it's a mess.
yeah.
It's a mess. So, that's
Um,
kind of odd, you know.
on that, Dan, I wasn't there at the
Hmm.
time. I think I was actually living in Monroe, Louisiana at that time.
Mm.
And me and my previous first wife, big mistake. Um, this is the best one in the world right here. Sorry, everybody, but can't get better than this one. I was actually there, and me and her came over for a visit, and I asked my dad. I said, I thought you had some little ducks and some small turkeys. He said, well, hell, son, I did. They all came up missing. And
That's crazy.
I asked him, I said, well, what got them? They said, I don't know. And that was about all they said about it. And I didn't ask any more. So if
Yeah.
there was feathers or anything, I do not know. I couldn't tell you.
Well, let me ask you this. So you kind of had encounters since you were 10. What do you think? What do you think they are? And just in your opinion, and there's no wrong or right answer. I mean, I've heard the entire gambit of what people think these are. I've even heard new ones I've never heard of. So,
What is they skinwalkers?
Um, before I answer that, Dan,
mhm.
I just thought about something when I was thinking about my dad. He passed away 3 years ago, 3-4 years ago.
Man, I'm sorry to hear that, man. It's rough.
Now his brother, my uncle, and I'm not going to say his name. They look a lot alike. They
Hmm.
talk a lot alike, and they walk a lot alike. Me and Jenny here, we were over there one day, and I told my uncle, I said, "Hey, Unc," that's what I always call him, Unc.
Hmm.
I said, I heard something over there behind the house the other night. I told him, described to him best I could what it sounded like. He said, "Boy, that was a coyote." I said, "That wasn't no coyote, Unc." He said, "Well, maybe it was a hog." I said, "That wasn't no hog, Unc." I said, "I don't know what it was, but it wasn't none of that." And this man went from a smile to a serious face. He said, "Maybe it was Bigfoot." I said, "Oh, I'm being serious." He said, "Damn, boy, so am I." And he's got this way of talking and the expressions on his face that my dad had.
Yeah.
And when dad looked at me and basically, "Boy, I'm not going to tell you again,"
Yep.
he meant exactly what he said. When he
Oh,
said that, I know he was telling me the truth.
I
Now,
know that. I know that look.
I don't know if he's seen something, if he's heard something, but I know he was not joking when he said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to answer your
Because
question,
think about this, Pat. From that time, that he said that, how many times prior to that have you ever heard him say something about Bigfoot?
never, because nobody ever really brought it up. You know,
There you go.
I mean, it says a lot. His
You know,
expression, the way he said it, tells me a lot.
it sounds like your uncle and your dad are kind of like my dad and my stepdad were. They, especially my stepdad, stepdad was born in North Carolina, raised in South Carolina, lived in the South most of his life, 26-year Army veteran, seen the world, and very quiet. And when he said something, you better listen, because it's not something that he's just gonna talk to hear himself talk. What he's gonna tell you, it's potentially life changing to you. So, but yeah, that's crazy. So hey, you know what? I just want to say thanks for coming on the show. And before we close everything up, you still haven't answered my question. What do you think these things are?
Skinwalker.
Well, the Bigfoots are not skinwalkers.
I
Um,
don't know.
I kind of have a weird theory,
Okay.
Dan.
I've heard some weird
Uh,
ones.
They're definitely, I believe they are definitely flesh and blood. I do believe that. Now, I know you're a Christian, and I know you know some things about the Bible. And and I think it's in Genesis, where they're talking about the days of Noah.
Mhm.
And it was, man laying with man, woman with woman, animal with woman, animal with man,
Mhm.
all kinds of crazy things. So, what would you say if I told you that I think it's possible, not guaranteed, but possible, that we have our timeline, our plane, and then you have one that runs parallel? Okay. The animals that were being used for these things,
Mhm.
if they have a parallel being of itself in a different plane, the birds that never happened in our plane because it's impossible for the DNA to match up,
Mhm.
what if that DNA matches up in the other plane?
Well, I'll tell you that in this entire genre of cryptid, you have your very hardline people that this is 100% flesh and blood. It's a relic hominid. It is a descendant of man. It's somewhere in that timeline. Then you have people say that they are hosts for aliens, that aliens invade their bodies, kind of like like a like a symbiont, kind of like Venom, and Spider-Man, something like that. Not necessarily that composition of an alien, but maybe like an earworm or something gets in there and takes over their mind. And I've heard that they're ambassadors from another galaxy or another dimension. So your parallel timeline, it's not a weird thing. Is it probable? Probably like that much, but again, in this world, in this whole thing, the room of probability is there, man. You can't take anything. I've had people say they've seen them walk out of a porthole right in front of them. They've seen them manifest out of like a mist, and there they are. They've said they've seen them dematerialize right in front of them, almost like Star Trek, where they're getting beamed up and they're getting beamed down. So again, there's so many theories out there. There's so many stories out there. Just throw it in the punch bowl with the rest of them, because you never know. And until you have a bona fide, I know what I saw.
Right.
My dad saw what I saw. We both saw it at the same time. My little brother later on told us, "Oh yeah, I've seen two of them, small ones." You have people that are in this community that have seen them and will tell you, like, I believe they're flesh and blood, but I believe they have some type of ability to cloak themselves, not in the sense of cloaking like you would think, like from like Star Wars or Star Trek, that they cloak a ship or something like that. But I think there's something with their hair and the way they're able to contort their body to where they can instantly, literally walk into a tree line and disappear
Oh, I agree.
from sight.
I agree.
Do I think they're aliens? No. Do I think they're part of the Nephilim or the Nephilim? I don't. I have a hard time believing that. But I'll keep my beliefs to myself because some people will tell me that I'm a heretic if I say what I believe, and then there's some people will tell me that, you know, I try to ride that balance, that scale. I try to keep my scale where it's kind of balanced. Okay, but I have my beliefs, and I'll hold true to them.
Right, right. And then, that's what you're supposed to do, Um, but, like you were saying with some of your guests or what have seen them step through a portal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what I was saying is if they're a type of hybrid like
Mm-hmm.
that, and, way back in the uh, days of Noah or shortly thereafter, what have you,
Mm-hmm.
they started coming through that portal, so to speak. I mean, there they are. That would account for the before Christianity, the Indians or the natives, whatever, had it written on the cave paintings and such like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that could go back a long, 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 really long time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Again, anything's possible.
Oh yeah. I mean, like you were saying on one of your podcasts, I think the one you posted yesterday or the one before that, where you were talking about um, the tree frog, the blue spotted tree frog or whatever it
Yeah.
was. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never even seen or heard of it, but I mean, I'm sure it's there. A platypus,
Yeah.
Uh,
Have you ever seen a platypus?
I've never seen one. I've seen one on TV, but
But
I've
you know
never
they
seen
exist.
one. Right.
But that doesn't mean that they don't exist. Just because you haven't seen one doesn't mean they exist. And so if you and Jen are out and about and and someone starts, you're talking to someone about it and someone tells you you're crazy that you didn't see that those don't exist, just ask them that. Have you ever seen a platypus? And they go, well, no, but they exist, right? You know they exist. Well, yeah, of course. There you go.
Right.
Plain and simple. Now I'm telling you, we have legit pictures out there. There are pictures and video of these things that are so real and 100% genuine. They will more than likely never see the light of day because
Yeah.
for every one legitimate picture that's out there, you've got a million ones that are bogus. And that's I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt when they come onto the channel. I try to safeguard everybody's story. I'm not going to chastise anybody for their story. Now, if it's so outlandish, I'm just not going to have you on, like for real. I just won't. Oh,
Right.
I was driving down the road and I saw this Sasquatch hitchhiking. He was dressed like a hippie, and I stopped and he said, "Hey, man," and he gave me this peace pipe. And next thing you know, we were up in a spacecraft. If you're coming at me with something like that, it's not coming on the show. It's just not, But I mean, there's some very outlandish encounters out there that have so much probability to them that you have to really listen to it. You have to give it some type of credence to it, because again, you're not in that person's shoes. You weren't there when they experienced what they saw or what they heard or what they smelled,
Right.
so it'd be completely wrong for me to say, well, no, you didn't see that because I didn't encounter that. This is what I encountered. And if it didn't match what I encountered, then you didn't see anything. That would be so wrong for me to do that, you
Right.
know? So, but I'm going to let you guys go hang out in the lobby for me. Again, I can't thank you both enough for one, show me those dogs. Can I pet those dogs? Because I love dogs. And just coming on the show and trusting me with your story. Again, I'm glad you were able to come on. And if anything happens, you know how to get a hold of me.
Absolutely.
All right. You guys hang out in the lobby real quick for me, okay?
All right.
All right, guys. That's Pat and Jen. You guys, very, very humble, very down to earth people from great state of Mississippi. And you guys, like I said, if you haven't had an encounter like theirs, and yours is maybe more, more of a visual, it doesn't mean that theirs didn't happen. So uh again, thank you so much. If you guys have had an encounter, you'd like to come on the show and share it, please email me at the cryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. Again, the cryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. If you haven't had an encounter and it's really messing with you in a way, and you just want to get it off your chest, go ahead and shoot me an email. Send me that encounter. I'll safeguard it. I'll put it in my vault. And if you'd like me to narrate your story for you, I'd be more than happy to do that on an episode. But like my buddy Josh always says, from Mysteries Unknown, stay prayed up. And as I always like to say, everybody, remember, a legend always starts with a sighting. Have a good night, everybody. I'll talk to you later.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?